I've got news for you.
Welcome to CitizenView,
where citizens come to talk.
Andy, it was just like a week ago where the American people punched their ballot for a second-term President Obama. Now our president's being punched in the gut with some issues, foreign policy problems in the Middle East, CIA director resigning, and the fiscal cliff.
The most difficult job in the world just got even more difficult at a time of all the adulation of the re-election of President Obama. Little do we know all these crises were going to hit all at once for him to handle with his different roles.
Yeah, we learn really here, Andy, a lesson on presidential roles. Let's take chief executive. Here we have a CIA director tragically falling in disgrace due to sexual picadillos. But Andy, the president feels this as chief executive because the buck stops on his desk. He takes responsibility for what goes on in the administration, in the executive branch, and this is a dark eye for the president.
Well, not only does he have to play the role of commander-in-chief in terms of the foreign intelligence, how the Petraeus departure impacts Benghazi and the investigation into Benghazi, but also his role as chief executive filling those spots. Sometimes we call that chief administrator, appointing someone new to lead the CIA. How is this going to impact the possible departure of Hillary Clinton and the new choice possibly of Susan Rice to replace Hillary? All of those roles, commander-in-chief, chief executive, merge with this story.
So this General Petraeus story, not only chief executive, but you're right, Andy, impacts those other roles like commander-in-chief and chief diplomat. How will this affect our ability to negotiate with other countries at this time? Not to mention there's some issues going on in the Middle East that's going to take this president's attention.
Well, certainly it's a good reminder that no matter what your plans are coming into office or coming into a second term, there are crises out there and emergencies that you didn't expect that can distract your attentions away from the best of intentions.
Well, in addition to these foreign policy issues that take up his chief diplomat role and commander-in-chief role, Andy, this fiscal cliff, everyone's talking about these draconian cuts that are on the horizon unless a budget deal is in place. This president's going to have to be chief legislator.
Well, he's the chief legislator, and this also plays in with the appointment process. You have to work with the Senate to get your people into office for the cabinet, for Supreme Court judges. In this case, negotiating with both leaders of the House and the Senate on fiscal matters, revenue increases, the possibility of spending cuts. And again, they've put this decision off till after the election, knowing that all of them, members of Congress and the president, would be on firm ground in terms of their election status. But the economy is certainly not in firm ground, which leads the prospects of the fiscal cliff more intriguing as to how they resolve this.
Let's not forget about the role as chief of party. Barack Obama may have won a second term, but he woke up the next morning realizing he still has a divided government, that Republicans still hold many seats across the country and they still hold a majority in the House of Representatives. That role as chief of party, not as easy as it might look, and certainly much more important than it looks.
And shockingly, we also look ahead towards the next election, the midterm election of 2014. We know that midterm elections tend not to be favorable to the president's party, but already the Republicans and Democrats are probably doing the math in terms of will things change with the outcome of those midterm elections and Obama's role as chief of party.
And Andy, if these crises aren't enough, fiscal cliff in the legislature, huge issues in the Middle East, the Petraeus resignation, you still have suffering people in New York and New Jersey post-Hurricane Sandy, and the president needs to take time away to go visit them and say, listen, everything's going to be okay. He visited New York again. He's chief of state. He's that ceremonial leader. He has to be the voice, the embodiment of the American spirit.
In all of these images, no matter whether we're talking chief executive, chief legislator, chief diplomat, the image of the president comes down to chief of state. And if the president has a dignified, respected, refined image, he's usually popular and can get things done with that power of persuasion. But if the president is perceived to be puny, small in office, he's going to be a small chief of state and not going to be able to persuade much.
On November 6th, we punched our ballot for Barack Obama for a second term. When he woke up the next morning, he was punched in the gut with all these serious issues. Our advice here at CitizenView is look at those presidential roles. Mr. President, Roll with the punches. We're the two teachers, and you've been listening to CitizenView.
No fancy words, no fancy suits.
Plain talk about issues you need to know.
Just in time.